Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to another episode of the devCodeCamp podcast. My name, of course, is Carl Peterson, devCodeCamp's social media producer. Thanks so much for joining us. If it's your first time, that's awesome. If you're coming back for another episode, that's even better. We appreciate you here, regardless of how many times or how often you stop by. So thanks so much. We have another great episode, and I think we should just dive right into it with the first question. It's a two-parter, which is, what is your name and what do you do at devCodeCamp?
Yeah, so my name is Nevin Seibel. I am the head of instruction at devCodeCamp.
Thanks so much for doing this, Nevin. We interact obviously multiple times on a weekly basis at meetings and stuff, but I'm super excited for you to be here, and thanks so much for taking time. I know you're incredibly busy, and this is going to be super insightful. So thanks so much. So
Yeah,
I
thanks
was
for having me.
absolutely, yeah. So I was wondering, what do you find the number one struggle students find in their first week of class?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because it is a struggle that a lot of students will face in the first week of their class, and that is just this critical thinking and problem-solving mentality that we are trying to bring students into and try to have them basically restructure the way that they think and tackle problems, pretty much from the ground up. And so that is something that a lot of students struggle with because of the way that traditional education has groomed most of the people that come through our course. It's not very conducive to this style of education. So very first thing, it's kind of relearn how to learn.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely a rewiring, and we're actually going to touch on that a little bit later too. So that's cool that you brought that up. And by the end of the course, how different of a person do you see? Obviously, the skill set's there, but mentality wise, do you see a difference that by
Oh
the end?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, people are just different people by the time that they're done with the camp. Because this, as I talked about before, this restructuring of their brain, the way that they tackle most situations, this bleeds into the rest of their life. This problem solving and critical thinking mentality does not apply to just coding, right? It applies to everything in life. Soon they're finding themselves, trying to tackle that pesky washing machine issue that they've had. Like, well, I maybe can, mess around with it and see what I can get going, and maybe they find solutions, right? So it is one of those things where by the end of the course, it's more of just like picking up a trade skill. It's picking up like a change in people's lives, typically changing the way that they just approach most situations in their day to day.
So, still touching on that first week, what does a high level week look like for that very first week for a student? What does that exactly mean? Obviously people come in expecting a lot of things. What does that first week look like?
Yeah, so first week we start off with just the fundamentals, the basics of programming, pretty much the things that the building blocks that all code is built on. And we try to go a little bit more slow in the first week just to kind of ease people into it because we realize that most people aren't coming in with this mentality already. Some people are, which is great. They tend to pick things up a little bit more quicker in that first week. But for the people who aren't, it takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to this way of thinking. So it's a lot of talking about the fundamentals. It's a lot of talking conceptually about the way that the code is operating. It's taking a look at the way your code is working and having you break down and understand what your own code is doing. And maybe having an instructor come in and take a look at your code and maybe pointing out something that you might not have seen, or maybe explaining an underlying thing that's going on with it that might be causing a problem or so on.
So just a total ease in introduction. When does it start to kind of pick up? And obviously it's a little different for each class and a little different for each course, but around when does it start to pick up to like, okay, gonna cut the rope just a little bit more here. You guys are, to the next level. How many weeks in does that look like?
Well, it's kind of in stages. So we don't kind of just cut the rope right away, right? It's more of a situation where we kind of slowly let go throughout the course. So if I like to tell my students as I'm describing the same thing to them, that it's kind of like a parent teaching their kid how to ride a bike for the first time. For the as we're first going, we're hanging on. We're the parent, we're hanging on, but over time we're gonna let go and let go. Till eventually you're just able to ride by yourself. So I would say typically, what you're kind of describing when it gets a little bit more intense is towards the end of the second week when we start diving into object-oriented programming ideas. And that's taking those fundamentals and now putting design ideas behind them. And that's also kind of like taking it to the next level, right? And then from the week after that, we take it up another notch. And it's like kind of this ramping up over the course of the class or the cohort. And it's kind of gradual. Some areas it's a little bit more steep just by the very nature of the course. But usually it's pretty gradual.
Sure, sure. And it all ends with the big finale, which is the capstone project, right? Can you talk a little
Exactly.
bit about what the capstone project exactly is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the capstone project is the crowning achievement of your devCodeCamp career. It is the project that is going to turn you into a developer. It is taking a project from an idea in your mind to a minimal viable product by the end of this 2-week sprint. So it's a lot of planning and basically behaving like a real developer would, in the planning stages of it, all the way through to the minimal viable product of the capstone. So this project is a culmination of everything that we've taught our students at devCodeCamp, as well as more, because there is only so much that we can teach throughout the course, but then there's just so much that you're going to discover naturally, especially when you start to build your own project from start to finish. You're just naturally going to run into things, and you're going to have to teach yourself and learn all throughout this process. So the capstone is really like, the best way to describe it is trial run at being a real developer.
That's a
Um,
great way of putting it. Yeah.
and so the way that I also say to students as well is once you have built that full stack application from start to finish, that's what makes you the developer.
So Nevin, when you see a student come from day one to building out these fully built out applications and websites, do you ever feel a secondhand kind of I use the word achievement, but do you feel pride in seeing that you had a hand in helping them get from that point A to point Z really?
Yeah, I would say a whole lot. That is one of the main reasons why I am in the position I am, is because I feel an enormous amount of satisfaction in being able to be that person that can make the difference in these people's lives. Throughout the 3 months, it might not seem like a lot of time, but I get to really know these students and where they came from and what their own personal struggles are throughout the course. And it's amazing for me to see these people graduate and the joy on their face, and the sense of accomplishment that they have. It's contagious. It's infectious.
What would you consider the most rewarding part of your job? Is it the capstone or is it just a mixture of everything?
Most rewarding, I would say, probably the what we were just talking about. It's just that knowing that job satisfaction for me, knowing that I am making that next generation of developers out there. I'm making those people that are going to go out into the world and change the world. I might not be the one who's changing the world myself, but I have a hand in it. So
Yeah, that's really rewarding. I would imagine that was going to be your answer, but it's nice to hear as well. So let's take it back to you a little bit. Why coding? I love this answer. I ask a lot of people, and everybody has a different reason and story. What's yours? Why coding?
Well, coding was one of those things that my father had always told me I should do, because he himself was a coder for many years, and he just said that I would be really great at. And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I kind of dismissed him for a couple of years, and um, my interest in coding ended up kind of being secondhand. It's kind of like I almost stumbled into it. So I was always really interested in video game development, when I was younger. And I actually started to get into that. I started building some games. I started learning how to do all that stuff as far as design, the art assets, and programming. I found that the programming made the most sense to me while I was doing it. But I didn't really think much of it other than just like, hey, this part really clicks with me, right? Like I wasn't always that great of an artist, so the making art assets wasn't always great. But they usually turn out as stick figures, very functional stick figures. Um, but yeah, then I found that I didn't really like the industry. I didn't really like what I was seeing as far as the video game development world. And so I was like, I wanted to find a change, but not something that was so far away because I liked what I was doing. And so I just was like, well, I like the programming side of it, so I'm going to focus on that. After playing around with it and learning more and more, it ended up being one of these things where I was like, I'm born for this. This is something that is very natural to me. And this is, as we talked about earlier, like this critical thinking and problem solving, it's like, it turns out my brain always worked that way. So it was like a nice little lateral move over into this business logic programming.
How important is coding not only today, but for the forever future of tomorrow? How would you rate that?
Yeah, I would say incredibly important. As everybody I'm sure knows, unless you're living under a rock or, in an Amish community, like technology is everywhere, right? It's more and more places. We talk about the Internet of Things, and the Internet of Things is growing and growing and growing. Everything is getting code behind it. Everything has some kind of, algorithm that's driving it. And so, pretty much in this technological world that we're only seeing more and more devices, we're only increasing the amount of ingenuity that we have as human society. We're going to need more and more people that can write these code. We're going to need more and more people to drive and build these things. So my answer to that is the importance is ever growing. It's with each passing day, it's getting more important. And so, as I said, even 2 years ago, now is a great time to get into code. And then a year ago, I said, now is a great time to get into code. Today, I say now is an even better time to get into code. Tomorrow, it's going to be even more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the next day, and then the next day. Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's always going to be a ramp up. It's a great answer. So we talk a lot about the devCodeCamp difference and stuff that we post and the things that we say. And part of that devCodeCamp difference, which kind of separates us from maybe other boot camps or other learning structures, one of the leading factors is the support system. And the instructors are a big part of that support system. And another thing that we do is ingrain this kind of learn to learn mentality to help you be a developer as long as you can be, because obviously the things that we're teaching and learning today may not be as relevant in 10 to 15 years because everything is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just mentioned. I was wondering how important, in your opinion, this learn to learn mentality and this support from instructors, especially early on in the course, how important that is to kind of lay the groundwork for the most success that these students will have in their career.
Oh, I'd say crucial. Absolutely crucial. It is one of those things that the sooner that we can start getting that problem solving and critical thinking mentality instilled upon our students, the stronger they're going to become in the long run. Because it's one of those things that just builds upon itself. And like all things, the more practice you have with it, the more you keep repeating this process, the better you're going to get at it. And by the end of the course, that's when you are the self-sufficient developer. That's when you don't even need the instructors anymore. And to your point as well, you say like the ability to learn how to learn, that's our end goal, right? We are trying to make ourselves obsolete. We want it so that by the end of the course, you're not necessarily going to need any instructors to teach you how to code anymore. You will be able to teach yourself from this point moving forward. And, you talked about the ever changing technologies, and that's a very true thing, right? Like, well, eventually you're going to have to learn new stuff very quickly because developing and programming is an ever changing world. And what you learned even 2 years ago is obsolete. You have to move on and figure out new things, right? But even still more important than that, particularly for our devCodeCamp students, for our graduates, very, very likely you're going to get hired at a company that doesn't use any of the technologies we taught you. And so you will then have to learn. I mean, that's pretty much what's expected the first day, first, month or so on the job is to learn this new stuff. It's not an issue that you don't know those technologies. It's that they know that you can learn those new technologies. So they're not necessarily concerned what you do know and what you don't know, just what you can learn, right? And so that's why, our graduates are so set up for the future is because the way that we teach them, the way that we instruct, you are ready to tackle anything that is thrown at you. And it doesn't matter if the company you're trying to apply for uses the same stuff that you already know. You can figure it out. You can learn it.
That's
So you
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you're really setting yourself up for infinite possibilities if you just adopt this mindset.
That was a really excellent answer. Nevin.
Thanks.
That was really good. And I hate to say this because I could literally talk to you forever, but we've arrived to the infamous last question already. I say
Oh,
infamous because
awesome.
I end the interviews the same question, and I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. If somebody was watching or reading or listening, however they're consuming this right now, and they were very interested in specifically, approaching Dev Code Camp to take those next steps,
Mhm.
what would you say to them?
What I would suggest is if you're interested in this, I would suggest to take one of our foundations courses. They are free. They're available for anybody to go and use. And you can just take a couple of days to go through this foundations course to see if it's right for you, to see if you like this sort of thing, to see if this is something that your mind enjoys, because enjoyment is a big part of it. If it's something that you find yourself pulling teeth trying to do, maybe not, right? But if you are really interested in it, my suggestion is to try it out. Um, More often than not, people find that it's not as scary as it seems to be, or that it becomes something that's incredibly intriguing to them, and now you want to know more. And now the curiosity is taking over, and now you're just off and running, right? Um, so yeah, my biggest suggestion to anybody who's looking into this program is try it out a little bit yourself. As well too, there's a million different articles out on the internet telling you what you should learn first. I would say none of that is really relevant. Everybody has their own opinions on what you should learn and start off with. Truth of the matter is, it doesn't really matter as long as you are learning how to learn. Then you can learn any of these technologies. As long as you're learning in the right way, it doesn't matter what you start with. It doesn't matter what technologies. It doesn't matter how often you are changing these technology stacks and learning new things. It's just picking something and sticking with it and learning as much as you can.
Nevin, there you go. That wasn't so bad, was it?
No.
That was just a test run. I didn't even hit record, so that was
Perfect.
no great. Yeah,
Round two.
yeah. No, thank you very much. That was really fantastic. And like I said, I wish we could keep going, but I've ran out of questions. So
That's okay.
maybe we can do a part two later on this year. That'd be great too.
Yeah,
But at the very least, thank you very much again for making time for this. I really appreciate you and everything that I see you do and know that you do, and especially for the knowledge that you shared with us today. So thanks so much.
of course. Yeah,
And
my pleasure. Anytime.
yeah, absolutely. And everybody watching, listening, however you're consuming, thank you so much once again for listening to us, and we really appreciate you so much. I'm Carl Peterson once again, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Bye, Nevin.
Bye bye.